Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about section 4.3, calculating slope between 2 points. So if I have a line that looks something like, let me get a highlighter. If I have a line that looks something like that line right there, okay, I could calculate the slope by counting on a graph, and that's what we learned last class. So if I have 2 points like we have, if I have that point and that point, we could calculate the slope by counting from one point to another point. So if I just want to know what the slope is of this line, I'm just going to count from the left point to the right point. So how am I going to get there? I have to go down 1. So down 1 is -1. I have to go with direction right 1, 2, 3. So that's over +3. Okay. And if you look at your line, my line is decreasing from left to right, and that's why my slope is negative. Now let's try it for the second example. So the second example is the distance from that point to that point. How do I get from the black point to the green point? In this case, I need to go up or down to get to that green point. I have to go up 1, 2, 3. So if I have to go up 3, that's +3 over how many? 1. Awesome. So that's my slope. Now this line is doing what from left to right? It's going up. So it's increasing. Okay, it's increasing from left to right. That's why my slope is positive. Okay, now so let's take these slopes. All right, I said that the slope here is, whoa, I don't know what that is. Let's try that again. M equals -1/3. Okay, so now say I didn't have this graph. Say I just had the 2 points on that line. So that point and that point. Let me go ahead and erase my X because I was just being dramatic there. Here we go. Okay, so now I have those 2 points. So what point is that? That's -1, comma, -1. Okay, so those are my two, that's 1 point, so I'm going to write that -1, comma, -1. Okay, awesome. Now my second point is what? 2, comma, -2. So that's 2, comma, -2. So that's my second point. We already write it in red. So 2, comma, -2. Okay, awesome. Now, say I just had those 2 points, and I said those 2 points are on a line, and I wanted to calculate the slope of that line. You could do that by something called the slope formula. Now, I have it over here. This is my slope formula. So I have m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So simply that means the change in y's over the change in x's, and we talked about that before. So if you don't have this written down, let's write that down. M equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay, so that's my slope formula. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm just talking about 2 points. So I'm talking about an x and a y. I'm talking about an x and a y. And this is my first point on the line. This is my second point on the line. So that's all I did. All I did was label. So now you're just going to plug it into the formula that I have. So it's going to say m equals, well, what's your y1? Your y1, or sorry, what's your y2? My y2 in this case is -2. Okay, so that's what you're going to write there. Let me do the whole thing. So then it's going to say minus your y1. So minus your y1, in this case my y1 is -2. So it's going to be my y2, which is -2, minus my y1, which is -1. Now make sure that you write minus whatever that value is. So even though there's a subtraction sign there, or negative sign there rather, you have to write your subtraction sign. Good. Now that's going to be all over your x2. In this case, it is positive 2 minus your x1. In that case, your x1 is right there. So it's my green, which is x2. In that case, it's 2. Whoa, let's go with a different color. 2 minus, what's my x1? Negative 1. Okay. Now that I just placed my values into my formula, all I'm going to do is simplify. Now remember this day one stuff, a double negative turns into a big positive. So essentially here I have negative 2 plus 1. So negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. Okay, so that's going to be on top. Now a double negative is a big positive, so then essentially I just have 2 plus 1, which is 3. So that is my slope right there. Now what should it match? It should match that slope up there. Okay, because that's what I did from the graph itself and the line itself, and then for down here all I did was take my points. Okay, awesome. Let's try one more time with this example. So now let's define those points. So here, this point right here is negative 1 comma 1 2 3 4 negative 4. Okay, so my first point is negative 1 comma negative 4. Okay, my second point is simply 0 comma negative 1. 0 comma negative 1. So now my slope here should be 3 over 1. Let's see if it happens. So I'm going to erase my slope formula real quick so I could color code again. So it's going to be y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay. Good. Now, let's go ahead and color code. So my x1, sorry, my y1, I keep going x first. You always start with your y's. Your y's to the sky. Y's on top. So y2. I want to go ahead and label first. So it's going to be xy, xy. Talking about my first set of ordered pairs. Talking about my second set of ordered pairs. Good. Excuse me. So now, my y1, or sorry, my y2 is negative 1 minus my y1, which is negative 4. So in this case, it's going to be negative 1 minus negative 4. Okay? So that's going to be on top. Now, secondly, I have my x2, in this case my x2 is 0, minus my x1, in this case it's negative 1. So I'm going to write 0 minus negative 4. Awesome. And now once I get those values put in place, all I'm going to do is simplify. So, excuse me. So double negative turns into a positive. So negative 1 plus 4. Negative 1 plus 4 is positive 3. Cool. Now I have 0. Double negative turns to a positive. 0 plus 1 is just simply 1. Awesome. My slope is 3 over 1. Does that match my slope here? It does. Awesome. Okay, so that is essentially what I'm doing when I calculate slope. So those were just examples on how to kind of match if you did have a graph. Okay, so now if you want to, okay, this is at the top of your paper, but I'm just going to rewrite it for you here. I'm going to go through one more example, then the second two are going to be problems to practice. So it's going to be y2 minus y1 all over x2 x2 minus x1. Okay? Now I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker, and I'm not going to highlight. All I'm going to do is label. So here, I'm going to say, x, y, x, y, first point, second point. Okay, cool. Now, remember, y2, what's my y2 here? It's 5. Minus, what's my y1? My y1 here is 2. Good. x2. x2 is negative 3. Minus my x1, which is 4. Okay, so when I go ahead and simplify, 5 minus 2 is 3. Oh, that's not 3. There you go, 3. Negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. So here my slope is negative 3 over 7. Now that negative could float. You could write that as negative 3 over 7. You could write it as negative 3. Oops. You could write over kind of 3 over 7 with a negative right in the middle. They all mean the same. Okay, good. Now, I want to show you one example, okay? I'm going to show you something with example 4, and then number 5 is going to be a money problem. Now, essentially, you don't have to always start with the second point. You can start with the first point. So you could really write that as y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So you could just switch it. So if you just like going from left to right, okay, if you just like going from left to right, let me see if I can move this over a little bit. Okay, so if I just want to go from left to right, I still have to label. So in this case, it's going to be my x, that's going to be my y, x and y. My first point and second point. Good. Now, essentially, I'm just talking about the change in y. So you could subtract 6 minus 1. Alright, or you can subtract 1 minus 6. It's still the same change in y no matter what point you go to. So, if I do it that way, where I start with y1, so it'll be 6, and equals 6 minus 1, all over. Now, the difference is, if you start with this first point for the top, you have to start with this first point for the bottom, which is 3 minus negative 2. Okay, so when I go ahead and simplify, it's going to be 5 over, right, 6 minus 1 is 5, and then here I have a double negative that changes into a big positive. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Awesome. So now here I have my m equals 5 over 5. Now, what's really important when you calculate slope is to always see if you can reduce. So if you could reduce that fraction, which means if you could simplify it or divide it out, please do so. Especially if you have signs, like a negative over negative, just change it to a positive, stuff of that nature. Now, I could divide 5 over 5 out to be simply 1, right? So my slope here is just 1. Okay? So always remember, it does not matter if you go y2 first or y1, you just have to start at that point first on the top and the bottom. Okay? So always the change of y's over the change in x. Okay? Awesome. Good luck. This one's going to be a money problem. Please show me when you are done. Alright, thank you. Have a nice day.